that's basically what we're gonna do the entire day today. At least that was my plan. In the beginning, I wanted to talk about the ban list as a whole a little bit, like kind of like talk about some of the thoughts I had with with some time passing since the list was revealed, like kind of like summarize some of my thoughts on what I liked. And then for the rest of the day, my plan is to do two things. The first thing is I want to talk about a lot of the current meta decks and maybe discuss like how they're going to evolve. Like we're going to take a look at deck lists before the ban list, talk about how those decks can maybe be adjusted, and maybe what their position in the format is going to be from now on, like whether they're still good or not. And then also I want to discuss maybe some new additions to the format. And new additions, in my opinion, can come in two ways. Either it's a deck that's releasing or support that's releasing in Burst Protocol. So we're going to take a look at Burst Protocol again with the knowledge of the ban list, maybe a little bit of extra information, and talk about some of the cards. Maybe some of them have a different effect on the format now that we have this list. And the other thing I want to talk about is maybe some decks that weren't meta right now, but gain a buff from this ban list and maybe return to the format. Like one example of this could be K9 Crystron, for example, is a deck that I've heard people talk about as something, because they did not ban Spell Canceller or Imperial Princess Kunkuri. I've heard people talk about, you know, with 3 Crystron inclusion now, maybe K9 Crystron is a thing again, you know, and so on and so forth. But yeah, so those are some examples of what we're going to talk about today. So yeah, Noroi is still 1-card Spell Cancel, Infinity Trap. Yeah, and also like in K9 Crystron, I think the loss of the case and the Jokul is not that bad, because you can just replace it with chaotic elements. I mean, you can do that in any K9 deck, but like in Crystron, I think it's okay to rely on Noroi as your starter, because Crystron doesn't necessarily need its normal summon, right? I think that is a big difference between Crystron and Vanquish Soul, for example. In Vanquish Soul, I think it's pretty effective that you cannot start with Noroi as often anymore, because you have 6 normal summons now in Vanquish Soul. You have 3 Madlove, 3 Raisin. You don't want to start with Noroi a lot of the times if you have those in your hand, right? So that's a conflict between Vanquish Soul and K9 now. So yeah. The combo required 2 Jokul, so you have to play 2 Lantern and Crystron? Maybe. I don't know. I haven't looked into the detailed combos yet, but yeah. VT Gary, thank you for the 32 months. Appreciate that. They do need 2 Lantern now? Okay, fair enough. Yeah, okay. So, my overall thoughts on this ban list now that I've had a day to think about it. Overall, positive. I think it is a good ban list. I think there's a lot of things moving in the right direction. Here's a few things that I personally don't find perfect. I think Dimensional Fissure is missing. I think especially looking at a format where Draco Tail is going to be a strong deck, especially after Burst Protocol, I think Dimensional Fissure is going to be a pretty popular card in a lot of decks, which I find quite annoying. It's kind of sad, because Harpy's Featherstorm was banned preemptively before Radiant Typhoon enters the format, and that's good. That is a toxic card gone from the game. That's awesome. Radiant Typhoon is going to be so much more healthy without Featherstorm in the game. However, Radiant Typhoon does not really care about Dimensional Fissure either. So I think Radiant Typhoon is probably going to be playing Dimensional Fissure to deal with Draco Tail. And that is really weird. I'll never understand this, but apparently they don't think banishing is a floodgate. Look at the Genesis point list. It's weird. Yeah, someone at Konami somewhere with a lot of decision power somehow loves Dimensional Fissure and different Dimension Ground. Like, they just don't recognize that everything getting banished is a turn skip for most Yu-Gi-Oh decks, if not game ending on the spot, right? It's like, but here's the thing, right? Once again, I said this in the past, and I'll repeat it again. Getting rid of the floodgates is a process. You know, it's not something, or I never expected it to be like one ban list to solve them all. It's like we got rid of a bunch of them at the end of 2025 with the last ban list there. Now we're getting rid of 2/3 more if you want to count Herald of the Arclight. I mean, it is definitely a floodgate, but not as generic as like Featherstorm or Barrier Statue. But we're getting rid of more and more of these cards, right? Which is good. The rate at which we are solving these cards at the moment in modern Yu-Gi-Oh is pretty good. You know, like if we keep getting rid of like 2 or 3 per ban list, that's a pretty good rate. I'm gonna be honest with you. So there's a good chance that people play Dimensional Fissure this format or DDG, which is gonna be very annoying. But if that's something that they do on the next ban list, that I guess, you know, well, there's progress, right? But I do think that Dimensional Fissure should have been on here, as well as Shifter, of course, going from 1 to 0. And that's the other thing. I think this ban list is lacking a little bit in the generic card department. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of the hits to the archetypes are pretty justifiable and pretty solid. Not perfect, but there could be a little bit more of, they could look at more generic stuff, right? Like I'm talking like, why is Called by the Grave still at 1? Why is Dimension Shifter still at 1? Droll and Lockbird is going from 3 to 2, which is kind of like an awkward spot for Droll to be at. You know, I'm not mad that Droll has gone to 2. Like I'm happy that the card is, you know, less popular now because the card is not fun to play against or play with. But I just don't think that 2 is like the perfect hit. Like this, it's something where you should make up your mind as a game designer. Like either this card is okay or it's not. And I personally think it's not healthy for the game. So it being at 2 is kind of weird. It's just gonna result in this thing where like now, in theory, decks that lose to Droll and Lockbird are a little bit more viable now. Like you know, my Sky Striker brain immediately is like, oh nice, only 2 Drolls, let me try and play Sky Striker again. And statistically it's just like there's going to be less Droll now, but that on the flip side, that also makes it like more like frustrating whenever you get hit with a Droll and Lockbird, because people are still going to play it, of course. I mean, depending on the format, it might be a main deck or a side deck card, but like as long as Droll is legal, it will always happen to you a couple of times per tournament probably. Like looking at the format that's coming up, like with probably a lot of Draco Tail in it, it's likely that Droll is not going to be a main deck staple in the upcoming format, which is good, but it's still going to be frustrating in a couple of games. So like Droll is always lurking around somewhere, right? So in the generic card department, I think we could have done a little bit better on this ban list. You know, of course, I mean, once again, called by, Crossout, Shifter, Ash Blossom as well. I'm not going to repeat the Ash Blossom rant. I've talked about it enough in recent weeks, but I would have liked to see that. I think some other very powerful non-engine could have been on here. Like I would not be mad if they hit the Dominus Impulse mainly. But yeah. Other than that, I think if we look at the archetypal hits, I'm happy about the Malice ban, of course. I'm happy about how Mitsurugi Yami was handled with the Arclight ban. I'm happy about the K9 hits, even though they're not perfect. But I said this in the past as well. I think the only actual solution to K9 is banning Ripper, but they were never gonna ban Ripper, so I think that's okay. For now, it only means that like the decks get a little bit less consistent, because Jokul was like the best starter for the deck most of the time because it didn't require your normal summon and just Extender and Searcher at the same time. Like a really strong card. Case for K9 to 1 is a really weird hit in my opinion, because they can just play Chaotic Elements instead, and that's kind of like the same thing. So like most of the K9 decks didn't play Chaotic Elements, which I guess, just in case you don't even know what that card is, because not everyone was familiar with that card. Like, Chaotic Elements is just a Rhoda for Jokul, because it searches a Dark Aqua. So, you can just replace Jokuls and Cases with Chaotic Elements, which the only real downside is that if you compare Chaotic Elements to directly drawing a Jokul, it's worse, because Chaotic Elements plays into Droll Lockbird, which funnily enough is now add 2, so you're not always going to get punished for that. And the difference between Case and Chaotic Elements is that Chaotic Elements cannot search Noroi. So if you don't have a level 5 in your hand, using Chaotic Elements for Jokul is not going to be a play, right? Yeah, and also Chaotic can be negated. Like if it can be belled, which Case cannot get belled, and also if you compare it to hard drawing the Jokul, of course, like Jokul plus level 5 beats Ash Blossom like it's nothing. But Chaotic Elements plus level 5 doesn't, right? So or Draco Tail Flame or anything like that, right? So it does make the deck weaker without making the deck unplayable, which is, I guess it depends where you stand on K9, right? I think it's completely subjective here, because this is what I was expecting them to do, right? I was expecting them to weaken K9 without killing it, because that's just what makes sense, right? K9 is not that old yet. It's a relatively new archetype in the format. It's still getting support in upcoming sets, so I didn't expect them to kill it. However, as you guys know, I'm not a fan of K9 and Ripper in particular, so I would have preferred if they murdered it, but I also didn't expect it, right? So this is like expected, and therefore I'm not disappointed by it, but like it's kind of whatever. Now, the one thing, well, there's two things in here that I think are pretty or not optimal, rather. I think Yummy Snatchy to 1 is way too much, personally. I understand that they are maybe a little bit cautious here with Yummy, and honestly, I think that's okay, even as a fan of Yummy. Once again, this is a subjective thing. Like, if you like Yummy, you don't like that Snatchy goes to 1. If you hate Yummy, then you're celebrating right now, right? So I think this is a hit that they are doing because they want to be better be safe than sorry, rather, right? I think that's the philosophy here. I think they want to make sure Yummy gets significantly weaker, if not killed, with this ban list. Not just because of pure Yummy, because if you look at the reality of the TCG at the moment, pure Yummy is a viable deck, but a lot of people are playing hybrid Yummy decks, like Yummy Sulfur Cord, Yummy Mitsurugi. And even though Yummy Mitsurugi is probably dealt with the Herald of the Arclight ban, I think they just wanted to make sure that other Yummy hybrids are not popping up to immediately replace Yummy Mitsu as like the best combo slop in the format. You know what I mean? I think, and honestly, I can get behind that. Even as a fan of Yummy, I can get behind like hitting the deck a little bit harder rather than not hitting it enough. Yeah. Why not apply this logic with other Justice Hunters teams? That's what I'm getting at, right? Out of all the decks from Justice Hunters to die, like, I would have picked K9 for this. I would have picked K9. I think, and I also think all the things I just said about Yummy, like the danger of all the hybrid variations and so on and so forth, all those things are so much worse with K9 as well, right? Like, once again, one of the first decks that people start experimenting with right now is K9 Crystron. And guess what? That deck does the most toxic shit in the game. Like, especially if you're trying to bring back Crystron inclusion to 3 in this ban list, like, I think they should have hit K9 harder. That is my biggest gripe with this ban list, is that K9 gets off so easy, because K9 is like the poster child of, you know, what's wrong with modern combo decks in Yu-Gi-Oh, basically, right? No locks on it, ways to negate hand traps, ways to play through multiple hand traps like it's no problem, and a lot of ways to like lock the opponent out of the game are enabled because of K9, right? So I think I would have preferred if they put Snatchy to 2 and did more to K9, for example, like Noroi to 1, or even the Ripper ban, you know? Like, I didn't expect it, but it would have been better, right? So that's the one thing I don't think is great about this ban list, is that like we're overkilling Yummy, but we're not overkilling K9, which in my opinion is not correct. Mitsurugi, as a Mitsurugi enjoyer, pure Mitsurugi, I think Habakiri to 1 is justified, but I also think it's not the perfect way to hit Mitsu. I think Prayers to 1 was better. They're both starters for Mitsurugi. I think one Habakiri is fine though. I think honestly, we're gonna talk about pure Mitsurugi later today, but Mitsurugi, as long as they hit prayers or Habakiri, it's probably okay. I think prayers to 1 would hurt more. I think prayers to 1 would hurt other decks more than pure Mitsu. But maybe that's not correct. I'm not sure. Because I think like if you play a small Mitsurugi package, then Mitsurugi prayers is more important because you can very easily justify playing 3 prayers because it's both a starter and interruption. Whereas in pure Mitsurugi, you can just search like Magatama instead, and that's okay. So I think it's easier for pure Mitsu to replace the prayers with cards that actually are useful in it. But yeah. All things considered, I've put in some thought into Mitsurugi yesterday, and we can talk about that in a second as well. But I do think Mitsurugi gets off okay here from this ban list. I do think pure Mitsurugi is playable after this. I think what suffers the most here is all the hybrids, because, and it's awkward, right? Because a lot of the hybrid variations of Mitsurugi, technically, in an ideal world, they don't care about Habakiri being at 1, right? Like if you look at it through the lens, since Mitsurugi Yami is dead, okay? Since Mitsurugi Yami is dead, let's think of it from the perspective of K9 Mitsurugi. If they're using the bridge between K9 and Mitsu, which is the Ashlan U1000 or whatever it's called, with the magic key ritual monster to search Habakiri, right? In a world where you can bridge into your 1 copy of Habakiri being at 1 does not matter, right? Because you're searching it anyways if you can bridge. So Habakiri being at 1 technically doesn't have as much impact on these Mitsurugi hybrid decks in theory. And the reason why I still think it matters is because in an actual game of Yu-Gi-Oh, you get interrupted. And in an actual game of Yu-Gi-Oh, you have to interact with your opponent. And what that means is that in reality, a lot of the times you don't get to resolve your bridge, but because Habakiri was at 3 and prayers was at 3, you had a really good chance to just draw your Mitsurugi engine, right? Like you had 3 pre-prep, 3 Habakiri, 3 prayers. And so it was like, you know, just like very often or more often than not in like K9 Mitsurugi, for example, you just drew K9 cards and Mitsurugi cards. And that was good enough because that was multiple pushes and you didn't have to worry about resolving your bridge, right? You would just like use your K9 cards to push, your opponent interacts with you, and then you go Habakiri in hand and your opponent is out of interruption. You're like, okay, nice, I win the game, right? And that is less likely now, right? That is less likely now because you only have 1 copy of Habakiri. So yeah, that is that. Of course, it also limits the ability of drawing like some really good combination hands, like prayers plus tribute is less common now. Ritual spell plus ritual monster is less common now. So yeah, I think the Habakiri limit is fine alongside the Arclight ban. Yeah. Other than that, personally, I'm a big fan of the switch around in Vanquish Soul. As someone who enjoyed pure Vanquish Soul a lot, I like that 3 Raisin, 3 Stake Your Soul give you starters for Vanquish Soul. I understand that they put Holy Suda 1. I'm not gonna argue against it. It's not. I don't think it needed to be there, but I think it's okay. I think especially, I mean, while we have, let's say it like this, while we have K9 in the game, I think it's good that Holy Su is at 1 because you don't want K9 Vanquish Soul at virtually full power. So I think that's a fair trade-off. And it's a good trade-off as well for Vanquish Soul, I'm pretty sure. I don't know how well Vanquish Soul is going to be positioned in the upcoming format because the competition gets a lot stronger, I think, than what it used to be. Like if you compare basically when Vanquish Soul, when K9 Vanquish Soul was at full power with 3 Holy Su, 3 Raisins, 3 Stake Your Soul and such, it was pretty much the best deck in the format. But like Draco Tail gets a lot of buffs with the new Albaz support, and the Vanquish Soul deck like loses a bunch of cards. Like Holy Su is at 1 now, Jokul's at 1 now, and so like I think the deck is still playable, but I think it loses one. I think the most important thing that changes for Vanquish Soul is the matchup against Draco Tail becomes a lot worse with the new Albaz support, because Draco Tail just makes stronger end boards now. It's not as easy anymore as like activate Jokul in hand, special in defense position, 2 level 5s, so they cannot use Horn, and then it immediately like lets you play through almost all of their interruptions basically. So I think the Draco Tail matchup is getting worse with the new Albaz support for Vanquish Soul. So yeah, I think Draco Tail also outgrinds Vanquish Soul now. I don't know if that's true actually. I think if you get into a grind game with 3 Raisins in your deck, I think you're okay, because like, don't underestimate, we've talked about it a bit already, but don't underestimate the importance of less spells in Draco Tail, because it's a genuine win con against Draco Tail to run them out of targets for Draco Tails in the deck. Like, that can happen. Like, you can genuinely win the game against Draco Tail by out resourcing their graveyard their graveyard effects, right? If they at some point, if they get to a point where they simply cannot resolve Urgula, Pan, and so on anymore, that's big. That is really big. So yeah, I feel like Suda 1 is a sign of how they will handle Phimena in the future. It's possible. It's possible that that is an indicator. I personally think it's not, because I just think it's because Holy Su is overtuned. If you compare, like, I fundamentally am a big fan of Holy Su. I think cards like Holy Su, cards like Phimena, cards like Izuna should be more popular or relevant in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, because or they should make more of them, because I'm a big fan of playing on turn 0 without like straight up negating your opponent's stuff. Like, I think cards like Dominus Impulse or Valor or Imperm or Ash going second, they just don't make for very interesting gameplay, because in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, very often with those cards, you just like try to stop your opponent from playing, and if that's successful, then you win the game because your opponent hasn't basically done anything. And if it doesn't work, then your opponent just plays through them and wins the game because you have barely any cards left. So I've been a big fan of like these kind of cards that like impact your opponent by offering you like removal of some sorts, you know, like a Phimena to like make an Arthalion that can bounce, or you can trigger an Urgula, or you can trigger a Pan. So like you get removal, but you also like develop your own game state, right? You don't like lose all of those cards. Like, you just don't hand loop yourself by doing those things, right? Holy Su, same thing, right? Like, Holy Su on paper is like it destroys 2 cards. It doesn't negate anything. Like, you can raise and pop a monster and then Valius pop a monster, which most decks can deal with some removal. It won't really stop your turn. But the cool thing about that is that you don't lose a lot of cards while doing that, right? Like, you still maintain hand advantage and board presence for going second. So I think this sort of thing is important for modern Yu-Gi-Oh. I think this is what it needs to make the game interesting for the player going second. I think like opening Imperm, Valor, Ash it just usually doesn't make for very interesting games, because after you've used those cards, you have 3 cards left, and then your opponent either makes an half board and you can't beat that with 3 cards, or your opponent doesn't play, and then you just win because you resolve 1 card, unless your opponent also has Ash, Imperm, Valor, or whatever, right? So like, I very much prefer this like whole turn 0 in archetypal plays, and I think it's a cool way to also distinguish decks from each other, right? It's like, it's a cool way to make decks not all feel the exact same if they just have different turn 0 plays, right? It's not like every deck plays Imperm, Valor, whatever. It's like, oh, you have this deck plays Holy Su, this deck plays Phimena, this deck plays Cool Tune Clip, this deck plays Izuna. You know, it's like it's interactive without being too repetitive. So but of course I want to caveat all this, that even within that design space, they can design cards that are maybe a little bit overtuned, right? Like if they give every single deck like turn 0 plays, maybe some of them end up more powerful than others, right? So and I think that's what's happening here. I think they're just saying like, okay, while we have K9 in the mix as well, I think Holy Sue shouldn't be at 3 because it's doing a little bit much maybe. But that's how I feel about turn 0 cards in general. So I really don't hope or I really hope that that they don't end up just putting all of those at 1 and then move to a different design direction. Because overall, I think it makes for a very enjoyable game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Havness to 3 win. Havness is the same idea. Havness was a pretty well-designed tier limit card because it didn't really stop the opponent, but it just like advanced your own game state that could eventually maybe turn into a disruption, right? Like maybe you could make like a Kaleido Heart on turn 0 or something. The least exciting part about this ban list is probably the unbans. I do think there's a chance that Black Dragon Color Serpent and White Dragon Wyver Burster have an impact. I'm not entirely sure in which deck yet, but I mean, Dragon Link is looking to make a return. So I could see these cards actually seeing some play. Dryden to 3 should have happened a long time ago. Change of Heart and Snatch Steal are fine. I think Crystron Inclusion has the chance to be relevant. So, yeah. Striker Dragon and Chaos Space are still at 1. Wait, Chaos Space is at 1? Really? I know Striker Dragon is at 1, and I think that's fair. Oh yeah, Chaos Space is at 1. That's crazy. Chaos Space searches Habakiri. Maybe it's good that it's at 1, huh? Maybe it's good. I'm so glad Savage didn't come back. I was a little scared of that. I was scared of Savage coming back. I'm not gonna lie. I'm very happy they did not bring back Savage because, like, it's just not worth it for the overall health of the game. Like, I understand that they maybe want to sell like Rocket more when it comes out, sure, but like, come on, we really don't need Omni Negates back in Yu-Gi-Oh, especially on release of Spenta, right? It's like, and that's the thing, right? That's also something that I do appreciate that, you know, because from the perspective of just like trying to sell as many Spentas as possible, sure, bringing back Savage would have made sense on this ban list. That's why I was genuinely scared of it. But I like that they didn't do it. I'm really happy that they resisted the urge to bring back Savage to sell Spenta. That's a good thing, you know? Like, I gotta give credit where credit is due. I think it's good that we did not get Savage back. That is cool. Before we move into the individual decks, after thinking about it for a while, I still think it's a solid ban list. I see its flaws. I do see some flaws. It's not perfect. It's not like the best ban list ever, but it's pretty solid. I think a lot of things done right, couple of things not perfect, couple of things missing, but it's a solid 7 or 8 out of 10, I think.